We're chillin'! We're chillin' with Rick. He's gonna get to the story quick. Yeah, we're chillin'. Yes, we're chillin' with Rick. Chillin' with Rick, everybody. Yeah.
All right, let's get to the sponsors. Upscale Exotics, reptile-only specialty store that carries exotic reptiles looking for homes. They have snakes, lizards, geckos, turtles, chameleons, tarantulas, and more. It's a store of the creepy critters. With all the supplies, enclosures, and food, it's your one-stop shop, and they have knowledgeable staff located at 145 West Seneca Street in Sherrill, 315-367-5002. Games People Play, formerly Mind Games. It's a game store with so much more. They've been in business for 28 years. They have Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, or Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, and also sports cards. They also have retro video games and board games. Weekly events held in-store and a knowledgeable staff located at 114 Madison Street in Oneida, 315-363-2448. Whitestown Automotive, quality repairs at a good price just up the Thruway Bridge in Westmoreland. Boogie Dad's Music, working on producing and distributing music on all platforms and great royalty kickbacks for all performers. Oneida Carpets. Oneida Carpets, family owned and operated by Scott and Lynn White. They're both installers. They install carpet, laminate, vinyl, luxury vinyl, plank flooring, and ceramic tile. All of your flooring needs in one store. They're located at 174 Madison Street in Oneida, 315-361-9800. Big Girl Stump Removal. Do you have a stump that needs to be removed? I'm talking about a tree stump. Then call up Big Earl. He's a great guy with very fair prices, and he'll grind the stump right down to the roots. Give him a call at 315-363-5217. Papa Top. That place out there is just like Florida. It's a tropical paradise out there on that big old deck. They have obviously the outdoor deck, Adirondack chairs, picnic tables, bar stools. Grab some friends and go listen to some live music at Papa Top. Frog's Bar. Outdoor bar, picnic tables, Adirondack chairs, 2 fire pits for when fall comes. The owner, Mary, is phenomenal. She's a friend of mine. She wears the chillin' zip up proudly. And there's live music there all summer. Oneida Calet Civic Center. Upcoming events include NU Wrestling on May 27th. I'll be at that. Absolute Adele, an Adele tribute show, coming October 22nd at 3 p.m. Get your tickets for that, oneidacalet.com. Also coming on Saturday, February 24th, 2024, is Appetite for Voltage, a Guns N' Roses AC/DC tribute band. Get your tickets at oneidacalet.com. All right, on to my next guest.
Hurry up, hurry up.
I don't run anymore. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Chillin' with Rick. You wanted the best, you got the best.
Where? Here.
Ladies and
Pleasure,
ladies,
man.
Just Joe is here. Is it Altier or Altier?
Altier.
Joe Altier is here.
Yeah, because
it's
supposed to be Altieri,
Yeah.
but it was, it's Italian. I don't know exactly the story. If I'd have asked my mom again, but my grandfather took the I off.
Yeah.
Or his grandfather took the I off. I think it was my grandfather. That's what a lot of immigrants did back in the day. They shortened the names up.
All right.
So
Cool.
took the thing off, and now it sounds more French than it does Italian. So
You're a ritzy kind of guy, anyway.
yeah, sure.
Thank you. I know you're extremely busy.
No,
This
I'm glad
from the
this
bottom
finally
of my
worked.
heart, man.
From
the bottom of my Just Joe t-shirt.
It's been a long time coming. I know that.
Yes. I mean, I had to get a hold of Uncle Jimmy to get you. And you know that.
Yeah, Uncle Jimmy pulled it through.
Thank you, Uncle Jimmy. I bow.
Yeah.
So what's going on, man?
Nada, man. Just it's the summer grind.
Yes.
Even though the summer grind seemed to start back in February.
Yeah.
It started getting busier. I started getting exponentially busier because I decided coming out of 2022 to start playing more
Yes.
live shows because obviously 2020 was virtually none live shows. 2021 had a few. 2022 started getting real busy with me on a lot of stuff, and at the end of 2022 I decided to step away from other things. Twitch, we were talking about that before we started.
Yeah.
Decided to step away from that. And
So you just took a break.
Yeah, it was during the pandemic, as all of us musicians, we lost all our gigs, and me as a full-timer, I was like, what am I going to do?
You don't have the 9 to 5,
What am I going to do, But, I mean, luckily, I'm an amazing accountant.
Yeah.
And the accountant was always prepping me for, hey, what if this, what if that, what if this, and always had me prepped so that when things hit, I'd always run. Unfortunately, a lot of musicians do a lot, they run under the radar.
Yeah.
And I did for a number of years too. You do that to oh, I'm a musician, I'm getting cash, I'm not going to do that. But as I got older and more into it, I'm like, no, I'm a business. I'm no different than the gas station down the street or.
This is about to be a business.
Right, it's a business. And in order for me to be able to get loans for cars or a mortgage or any of that stuff, you got to legitimize yourself. And yeah, it does. No one wants to pay taxes. No one wants to legitimize all that stuff. But it was now jumping forward when the pandemic hit. I was eligible for a lot of the programs that a lot of my fellow musicians that didn't get themselves ready were for. So yeah, there was a few weeks of freaking out, but then my accountant's like this and that. Yeah. And during that time, I started streaming on Twitch and started doing very well on there because no one had any other options for entertainment.
Weirdly paid you quite well. Tim White is a good friend of mine.
Right. So it was like, what do we do? Some people were streaming on Facebook or Instagram and all that stuff, but there's no infrastructure.
Yes.
To be able to do that. And I was already familiar with Twitch. I was on K-Rock for the 3 or 4 years prior to that.
Yeah.
And we started using it on there in the morning show just as another way to get people to interact with us. And I even was in the fall of 2021 or the fall of 2019, I should say, going, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do this once in a while or once a week. Maybe this could replace me having to be out as much.
Yeah.
So I was already pretty familiar, but when I saw the writing on the wall and some musicians I don't think we're going to lose all of our gigs. And I'm like, I think we're going to lose all of them. Like that one week in March. So I immediately went out and I bought a camera and a few things for my studio that I didn't have. I eventually had them more, I ended eventually buying better stuff, but at that time, I just bought everything I could.
Yeah.
And then a week later, 4 or 5 days later, everything went. And then you couldn't buy any equipment because then everyone was buying it because businesses needed to keep running. So, and I just started streaming on there and luckily I built a huge community on there. And that was a good 2.5 years of on there doing very well with it, and that opened multiple doors, which led to touring again and collaborations and finding this new avenue, and TikTok and all these other things. And I know I'm kind of jumping ahead. You might want to talk about it, but that was really where it got it. But to get where I was started with this was when 2022 was ending, and I had spent a good 2 months on the road last year. My TikTok had kind of blown up. Instagram was getting bigger. All these things were happening. I was getting more and more offers to come back and play in the world. And once I realized, all the craziness, I wasn't fearful for a lot of the other reasons that some people were. I just wanted to make sure when I came back, everything was going to be feel like it did before. Yes. I didn't want to you got to jump through 30 hoops to get a gig, or some people can't come to your gig, or some people don't want to come to your gig yet. They felt fearful of it. And I kind of wanted to wait until it was that time, or businesses were ready to do it. And all of a sudden it was man, I'm getting so many offers and there's more money to be. At one time I was making more money on Twitch than I would have made in the real world, and eventually I started doing this. Yeah. And as concerts came back, and even as your local musician playing down at the pub came back, less and less people were on Twitch for that.
Yeah.
You know, so I started seeing my numbers go down. I started seeing the revenue go down. And it's like, okay, I'm going to give it 4 weeks. I'm going to give it 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm going to see if anything turns around or if I can hustle it differently. And it just started to become not fun.
Yeah.
And it started, the amount of time put into it. I hated having to put like a dollar sign on, like, I need to make this. And I wasn't saying that to my fans, but like in my head, I need to make this, you know? And if I'm not making it, you know, there was a few times where I chose not to take a gig, on a real life gig, and decided to stay home streaming, and I didn't make diddly squat streaming. And I'm like, oh man, I just missed out on this. So it was like diminishing returns, and it's like, okay, I got to make a thing. And I thought about trying to balance the two, and it's like, it was going to be really, really hard to like try to balance the two. Here's the thing: when you go out and play a gig, even if it's on a Tuesday night, I know I'm making a guaranteed amount of money.
Yes.
On Twitch, you can make $0, or you can make.
I've known people that made zero.
Yeah, I made $0 for hours and hours of work, or you can make exponential. You can make a lot of money. There was nights on there I was like, how much did I just make tonight? It was crazy.
Yeah.
But that wasn't happening anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a gamble.
Yep.
That's the problem, I think, that where Twitch lost a lot of their creators is, and why they didn't keep them, is that you could have offered a bunch of us incentives, especially the ones that had done well and it earned them a lot of money. Like, why wouldn't you come to us like you did to your big gamers and be like, here's a base rate pay for every time that you know you're going to get this. And some streaming platforms are starting to offer that now. You can't expect everyone to just be on there all the time pouring their heart out and not having at least a base amount of pay.
Yeah, give you something. You know,
Give
you're
us
putting all the time and effort in.
something,
Didn't you go live for 9 hours?
Yeah, there's a few times that I went on there
How
for
the
9
hell
or
do
10.
you even do that, Joe?
Well, I mean, you're stopping, you're talking to, you know, your fans. You know, I take a break, I go out in the kitchen and eat. But it just got to a point where it was diminishing returns. It wasn't making financial sense. And 3, it really started getting a little old for me.
Okay.
You know, it was just like, it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And when something isn't fun anymore, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
So it was time to kind of like say goodbye.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever go back. I don't know. There's a really weird side to all of Twitch too, that I don't think, I mean, the people that are in that world, like,
I think Tim's done.
it's just,
I mean, I think he said it wasn't worth it for him.
it just
anymore.
wasn't worth it anymore.
And he was only doing Tuesday nights.
Yeah, and the people that are made there on longevity have all said that, like, especially musicians, because there is a ceiling for us. And I worked with a lot of the biggest musicians. I toured with the biggest musicians.
We'll get
and
to that.
You know that you hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
And if they've only gotten this big and they're starting to come up, there's no going up above that. And there's a lot of things. That could be a whole podcast in itself of what I think Twitch could have done to be able to do bigger things and all that stuff. But, whatever. So at the end of 2022, I said, it's time for me to jump back in full time. I'm still creating. I'm still doing tons of videos, short form videos and all that stuff.
You're blowing up on TikTok.
Yeah, and it's done very well for me, But that ebbs and flows. There's days I'm getting, tens of thousands of views. There's days I'm getting 1,000 views, but that's the way it goes.
I'd kill for 1,000 views.
Yeah.
You are the king of likes. How the hell does everybody like Joe?
I don't know, man. You got to keep.
I watch your videos. 1 million freaking views.
Yeah.
10,000 likes. I was like, I would kill for 10 likes.
It's that's just years and years of grinding and just finding it in and finding a lane and going down it. But any huge TikTok star, like just like anything else, it's gonna come and go.
Yeah.
And you can't get frustrated. It gets frustrating after having this huge high and getting all these likes and all these things. So it's like, man, no one likes me anymore.
Everybody loves you.
It's like no one's paying attention. I must not be doing. What do I got to do next? And it's like, you know what? I watched a bunch of big creators, and I had a bunch of friends who were, good friends of mine who gotten to that point, and they're like, stop trying to guess at what people are going to like and do you. And that's
Best
it.
advice ever.
And
I
like
got that advice.
Yeah, don't do it. It's very hard for us creatives to not do that. I mean, I could see that being back in the day when a band sold 10 million records, and then they put out the next album and they only sold 1 million, and then the record after that they only sold 500,000. Whereas a bunch of us are like, I'd kill to have 500,000. What do you mean? They're like, what? But I sold 10 million. No one likes this anymore. It's like, it's very, when it comes to art form and creative endeavors, man, you can go really down a dark path if you don't let yourself just be like, you know what, I'm just going to create, and that's all I'm going to do. And if people dig it, they dig it.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's nice to know that you actually have go-to people, and you get scared here and there.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with content. I mean, I'm bending Moyer's ear, Daryl White's ear. They're both my best friends, so I'm always bending their ear. Hey, man, I think Chillin's doing good, but it can always be better. And Daryl is always the constant. You know how sweet he is.
Yeah.
He's like, be you.
Be you.
I was trying way too hard at one point.
Yeah, well, it
He's
is.
like, you gotta be you. He goes, people love you. Let it show
Right.
on camera.
Right. I mean, that's what
And
I've
now
done.
I'm sitting here with Joe.
Right. I'm been a full-time musician for
Yeah.
23 years,
Yeah.
22 years
Yeah.
as a full-timer. And, you know, I tell a lot of these younger musicians, and they're like, man, I want to get to where you're at, or, you know, and how many gigs you're doing and all the things you're doing. I'm like, well, how long you been doing this for? And they're like, I don't know, I've been dipping my toe in for about 5 years, but I've been full-time for like 2 years. I go, 2 decades, bro.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yes, it does take
And I go, and then I tell them to go read a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yep. Do your homework.
and it's basically a book talking about, you know, how people become successful. How do you become successful? You know, how, and it's 10,000 hours of doing one specific task.
Z told me that. Z's coming tomorrow.
Yeah. 10,000 hours, which equates to about 10 years.
Yes, it does.
So you're basically going to devote yourself for 10 years. Doesn't mean that at the end of 10 years then, it just means that you are in the position now for that. And that's when, like, luck, connections, all these things start playing in the thing. But you're not gonna do it unless you get that 10,000 hours. So just keep grinding.
I'm doing 4 of these a week. I'm doing 62 in 18 weeks.
There you
62
go.
episodes.
There you go.
I'm the Joe Altier of freaking chill.
Well, I mean, look at this. I mean, the biggest podcaster on the planet and of all time is Joe Rogan.
Yep.
And Joe Rogan will always say, man, he's like, I used to just do this to hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
You know, on
That's what I'm doing.
on a random. You know, we come back from the club and I just talk, and he goes, I just would do it in my bedroom, and then I went to this, and I went to this, and, you know, and then 15 years later, he is the most influential person on the freaking planet.
And whether you like him or not, Logan Paul is good too.
Yeah.
He's a wrestler now.
Yep.
He's in WWE. You know something about that.
Yes, I do. So, ask me anything you want.
So-
I mean, I could talk all night, but
I love it. I want to backtrack. I want to know, like, where were you born and raised and all that kind of stuff, and did you come from a musical family and all that kind
yeah.
of
Well,
stuff?
I was born in Syracuse.
Yeah.
Is that the church?
And it's a church.
How long does it sing for?
A couple more minutes. I apologize, brother.
No, don't apologize. I don't care.
Jose Lopez loves it. He's like,
That's funny.
I'm sorry to name drop, but I'm friends with all
No, that's
you guys.
funny. But I was born in Syracuse, but I was raised up in Central Square, New York.
Okay.
It's like 20 more.
It's done now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. 20 minutes north of Syracuse, and that's where I went to high school. I went to school. I went and out there, and I kind of came from a musical family.
Okay.
No musicians in my family per se, but music was always around. My mom kind of played piano. She played piano in the church when she was younger. Both of my parents, I mean, I grew up in Central Square, but my parents and family are from a small town called Hammond, New York, which is up in between Ogdensburg and A-Bay.
Okay.
Middle of freaking nowhere,
Oh.
man. You know, my parents had like 15 people in their graduating class.
Gotcha.
It's tiny town.
Tiny.
Farming town. You know,
Almighty has 10,000 people.
everyone was farmers up there. My parents were farmers. Both sets of grandparents were dairy farmers.
Yeah.
So, but there was always music around, and I had 2 older brothers, and both of them were very musical.
Okay.
My oldest brother, Mike, he listened to everything. You know, he'd be in there. Yeah, I mean, he'd be in there, and we'd be listening to Alabama, and then the next thing you know, we'd be listening to Ozzy, and then the next thing we listen to the Eagles, or, you know, my dad would be listening to Elvis or Floyd Kramer. My mom would be listening. Like, there was always music being played in my house, and there was always a piano in the house.
Yeah.
And my mom would kind of play. She tried to teach my brothers. My brothers didn't have the patience to sit there, so by the time I'm the youngest of three, so by the time I started, I was about 4 or 5, probably 4. I remember pretty vividly before I was starting kindergarten. I was sitting down and tinkering away at the piano, and my mom came over and started teaching me the simple, dun, 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 and teaching me how to read music. She's like, this is, she wrote all the with pencil on there, C, D, E, F.
So you can read music.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians I know can't.
I actually learned to read music right around the time I was learning how to read words.
Wow.
So my mom taught me how to do that, and that's a very young age for most people. Most people don't pick up an instrument until they're teenagers. So.
Yep, that's true. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I picked up on guitar at 12. 12 seems to be the magic
Yeah, it's usually around there. So for me to start doing that at 4 or 5, so she taught me how to read music, and I was playing simple stuff, and she taught me some simple things.
Okay.
And then, she didn't know where I was going to go with this, if I was going to keep interest. But I kept interest, and then I would used to bring out my record player.
Yeah.
This is even before tapes really get big. Bring out my little record player, and I'd set it next to the piano, put on a record, and listen to it, and then I would teach myself the song by ear.
Oh, okay.
So then I'm like, and I'd find it, and then even just simple like that, and I would teach the song. So I'd bring out my boombox eventually, play along to every song on the radio, would come along, and just like try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's at that time my mom's like, I can't teach you much more. Let's find you a piano teacher. And we searched around something square, and back then, like now, there's musical, places where there's multiple teachers at. And back then, especially where I grew up, there wasn't a guitar teacher. You had to kind of seek that out.
Yep.
There wasn't a Facebook to find it.
There's no YouTube to look it up.
Right, there was none of this stuff. So my mom made a couple phone calls, and we found this guy that was in town. He was a retired school teacher from our school district that was a music teacher, and he was giving piano lessons at his house, Central Square. And his name was Rudy Streckel, and God bless him, he passed away a couple of years ago. But I went there and I started learning, and I learned, we started doing classical or very early Americana type of stuff.
Yeah.
And we did that from the ages of 8 until I was about 17. So I was taking lessons for about 9 years.
Right.
But it was about 5 or 6 years into that, I told him, like, I can sing. I want to know if I want to learn to play and sing.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other monster in itself, because guys can play. But playing and sing is not always the easiest thing to do. And he's like, well, what can you play and sing? And I played him a song, and he's like, oh wow,
yeah,
all right, well,
I was like that too.
Do you want to explore this route? And he wasn't a teacher. I didn't want a teacher that was going to be like, no, you're going to learn Bach and Beethoven, and this is how very strict.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Let's explore this, man. And he was so incredibly open to anything. And the last year that I had my recital, because I told him, I'm going to have to step away because I was getting near my run in high school. Sports were very important to me at that time. Okay. That was what was going to get me into college. I was, a football star, had scholarship offers, and also in track. So it was like, all right, I'm looking at college. I got to go where I got to put my focus over here. So I stepped away from piano lessons. And at my last recital, I told them I wanted to play and sing. And up to that point, I'd only played and sang in my house.
Okay.
For my mom or, some family friends or a couple of my friends that would come over.
What age did you realize that you could carry a tune and might be good? Like what? Young?
5, 6 years old.
Dude, you were meant to be.
I knew,
man.
yeah.
You were meant to be.
It was like, I can't imagine, someone's like, did you choose music? I'm like, no, music kind of chose me.
I get it.
I mean, that's the saying. But so at that recital, I did Every Rose Has Its Thorn by Poison.
Yep.
And it was in our local church, one of the local churches in Central Square. A lot of my buddies came. A bunch of people there didn't know that I played and sang. They knew I played piano. And my piano teacher played guitar along with me. Somebody's got a video of it somewhere. I don't know where it exists. I would love for them to track it down.
I would love to see that too.
It exists out there because he used to videotape all of them. But God knows if it even exists anymore. But so then all of a sudden going into my senior year, everybody was like, oh my God, I heard you play and sing. And then it kind of spread around the school. So, I would be at a party or at someone's house and like, play the song, so at that time, then I started going out. At that time, again, still no internet. So I'd save up my money and I'd go buy, music books, and you could buy them at like, we'd go to Pencam Mall.
Oh, okay.
And at Record Town and also at Cabbages were the two music stores there. Not only were they selling CDs and tapes, but you could buy music books. Like, hey, the top hits of 1989, or like classic rock favorites. Or
I had hair back then, Joe.
Right, the best of. So did I. The best of the Eagles. So I started buying these books of music, and since I knew how to read the music, and I knew the songs.
Yeah.
Open it up and I could play immediately. And then I just started amassing these books at that time. And then I went to college to do something completely different. Everyone's like, "Oh, you should go do music." Well, I'm like, what am I going to do with music? Like, a bunch of my friends were like, "Oh, we're going to join bands and stuff like that." I'm like, I got to go to college.
Yeah.
I got to go to college and get an education. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
But while I was in college, I just, again, any free time I had, I bought this. I saved up one summer to buy this keyboard from this electronics place in what is now Destiny USA. I don't remember the name of the place.
Yeah.
It was this really simple Casio keyboard, because I'm like, Mom, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Can't take the piano to college.
Yeah.
She's like, well, save up and buy this keyboard. So we put it on layaway.
Yeah.
And at the end of the summer, right when I went to college, I took the piano with me. So I had a piano in my dorm room. And any waking moment I had that I wasn't studying, which was much. I didn't study much in college. She won't hear that, but I didn't. I played football.
I'm not swearing.
She hears me swear all the time. I don't care. But so anytime I would sit there just in my room at night, have a couple beers or smoke a couple joints, and just sit there and just play music. And next thing you know, like, somebody from down the hall, and next thing you know, there's 10 or 15 people hanging out in the room.
Girls,
like,
huh, Joe?
Yeah, that's how I met the girls, man. And then it started turning into house parties. And then someone said, "Bring your piano to the party tonight. We won't charge you to get in. You get free beer."
All right.
So that was like the beginnings of Just Joe. So I guess that's the very condensed version of got me up to at least through college.
Yes. I love this. This is why I started I actually had a dream that I started this. I don't know if you heard my story, how this got started.
I have not.
I had a dream. I got a hold of Roy Costin.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. And I said, "Look, man, I just had this dream. I'm totally robbing Jimmy Fallon, but that's okay."
Whatever.
He goes,
Jimmy Fallon ripped it off from someone else too.
Carson.
That's what we do. Right, exactly.
I just made it my own.
Right.
I always had it in my head after it got rolling. And, Captain Jack Fettuccine, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He dresses up like the guy from the Caribbean movies.
Okay.
Captain Jack.
Yeah.
He was my first guest, and it got 50 likes. I was like, damn, it was his audience, though. So I go on to Roy Costin. I go on to Lynn White from Before August. Right here, check out Before August. And then all of a sudden, it's getting 50, 100 likes. Daryl White comes on, 1,000 views in a day and a half.
Right.
It took off.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, I'm doing
and I'm sitting
cool.
here like this. I was like, this wasn't supposed to happen.
Well, that's what happens, man. Like,
it just came to me in a subconscious dream.
That's what happened, and eventually when
I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yes.
And I wanted to quit. I don't know how many times. Poor Tim Moyer, because he's my go-to.
Yeah,
I was like, Tim, man, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. He's like, you better keep doing it. I'll give you the stunner.
Yeah.
So that's how this got started. It used to be called Chillin' with the Rick, because I'm a fan of The Rock.
Right.
And then I had an issue with a musician, so we stopped, chilling with Rick, because that's what we're doing. Right. I was originally going to name it Sitting with Rick.
Sitting with Rick. Whatever.
But I've heard Chillin' so many times, I was like, we're going to go with Chillin' with Rick.
No.
And now this is my 5th year doing it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, I've thought about walking. Dude, even last year when I was getting to this point where I was getting very frustrated with what was happening online or all this stuff. And like, there's times when you're grinding as a musician and you're playing 200-300 shows a year, and yes, it's the best job in the world. Yeah. It is, but it still becomes a job, and sometimes you're just like, I don't have anything in me, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, even at one point last year, I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna quit and go get a job at Home Depot. Screw it. I'm just walk away.
The most popular boy.
Right. I'm gonna walk away, and everyone's like, what do you and some of my friends are like, what? I'm like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I just have a fantasy of I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then you gotta step away, and you gotta kind of you take things in perspective, and you come back out of that like funk or that mindset, and then you're like, no, what am I doing? All right, what do I gotta do to make things a little bit different? What am I gonna do to make things better? Because it is a grind, but I'm glad that you stuck with it. Like when I got done with college, I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I went to college to become a social studies teacher, and I was going to coach football. And honestly, I had an offer to stay at college and become a student coach there and stay and get my master's and become a coach, but basically become a coach.
Yeah.
And I probably could have stayed in the coaching system within college. A lot of those guys that stayed there, went through that program, are now coaching, you know. The head coach of Cortland was a guy that played football at Fisher a couple years after me, and you know, he went into that. I could have easily went down that route, which would have been really cool. I loved football, but
Jose Lopez took that route. I think he's a soccer coach. He's a music teacher.
Yeah.
And I said to him when he was here, he's here a couple weeks ago, I go, do your students know that you're a legend?
Yeah.
He's like, I tell them here.
It's weird, man. It's like
29 years in Showtime.
But yeah,
Like, come
exactly.
on. Right out of, they started in school.
They started in school. I remember talking to Justin about that. I'm like, how long you been? I'm like, wow, man, that's a fucking long time. He's like, yeah, bro. So.
But they're top notch, man.
Yeah, they're I mean, they're just seasoned. When you watch it, when the first time I ever watched Showtime, I was like,
yeah,
these guys are tight. These guys have been playing together a long. You can tell they've been playing together a long time, and you can tell that they've just done it a lot. So it's like, that's what happens when you put in that 10,000 hours.
When I saw you for the first time, it was on Twitch. Somebody said, go check out Joe Altier. I said, all right. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name.
No, you're saying it right. You're saying it exactly right.
So I turned it on, I go, and you had 175 people watching you, and I kept a track on that. It only went up. I was like, how the hell can this guy hold an audience?
There was times on there.
That's when it first started.
When it was really rolling on there.
Yeah.
I was averaging 200-300 people a night.
Yeah.
Average. And then eventually, you know, some nights it would get, you know, depending on who would come in or raid in, or if I was getting a front page thing, there was times that it got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15. I think one time I was at 20,000.
Yeah.
And like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm in here,
but
I'm playing to a 20,000 seat arena. So it's pretty crazy. But
that's the first time I saw you, and I was blown away. I was like, holy shit.
But I came to that platform with almost 20 years of experience. You know, some guys were on there. A lot of musicians were on there. They'd never played real shows, where a bunch of us came from, you know, very seasoned backgrounds. And now we're trying to navigate this. But then, you know, your talent shows through. You know, because some of the people on there, it's more of like a vaudeville show. It's like, I play piano, but I'm going to dress up in a banana suit if we hit this many. I mean, I did the same thing, you know. Like in the pandemic, it's like, hey, let's do whatever. I don't have any other gigs. Let's keep making money, you know. Hey, if we hit this amount of whatever, I'm going to wear a banana suit or gorilla suit, or I'll paint my beard, whatever. I'll eat, weird jelly beans, or like, you know, we're doing all kinds of stuff. Which was fun for a while, but it was also part of the reason why I didn't want to do it anymore. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to play music. And I also just didn't. You're in a fishbowl you're on a fishbowl in there, man. And you know, at least at a gig, like, people are listening to you, they'll come up with suggestions, or sometimes nobody will talk to you. But on there, man, there's just a constant, hey Joe, play this, play that. And it's just, it was like, I can't. I just want to do me for a while. So, so where were we? So I finished college. All right, so I finished college.
How did Brand New Sin start? I mean, you had to be right on the cusp of that, right after college. I
finished college in 96, 97, and Brand New Sin started in 2001. So it was like this 4 years of like not really knowing what the fuck I was going to do in my life. You know, I came home from college. I worked at my buddy's bar, but really the basis of where Brand New Sin came from was when I moved home from Rochester, and I was helping my buddy run a bar out in Brewerton, New York. And a bunch of my friends from Central Square had started a band called Janus Breed. And at that time, in the late 90s, they had become one of the bigger original bands in the area. So I started, I'm like, I want to go hang out with my buddies and go see them play. And when I went and saw them play, I just became a roadie. I was like, I'll help you guys load the gigs, you know, I'll go with you guys, I'll drive, I'll do whatever. And that time, that's when I started meeting all the other bands in Syracuse. I dove myself into the scene. And at the time, my girlfriend worked at the Dinosaur Barbecue. She was a waitress at the Dinosaur. And at that time, Dinosaur had music 7 nights a week. National acts on Sundays. So between the Lost Horizon, the Dinosaur Barbecue, and a place called Stylene's, which is in downtown Syracuse in the Armory Square, which is called Benjamin's on Franklin now. And a few other clubs like Planet 505 and the Wolf Inn, and there's a ton of places that bands were playing, original and covers, but mainly at that time originals. I just dove myself in, and I was just becoming a roadie and helping people out, you know, not knowing that none of them knew I could sing or they knew that I had some kind of ability, but I was just kind of like feeling my way around, and I'm like, man, this band is good, that band is good, and I was scared to, like, I didn't think I was good enough to, like, find a band, or there was nobody I could find a band with, or I meet a few dudes and I was like, nah, I just wasn't vibing with it. So I spent all those years kind of like just delving into the scene and meeting everybody, even up at the Dinosaur Barbecues. At that time it was really blue, almost all blues there.
Okay.
You know, that's where I met, you know, the guys from Los Blancos and
I've heard of that.
And everything else in that scene. So met all the people that like run the scene and book the scene and all that. So right around the turn of the century, because we can say that now, I moved to Baltimore. I went down there to my friend that was in that band, James Breed, had moved to Baltimore, was running a boat trailer company. He's like, why don't you come move down here, man? Come down and work with me and, you know, get the hell out of state. And at that time of my life, I'm like, oh, whatever, you know, like, no kids, no nothing, let's go.
Yeah.
And there was a recording school down there in Towson, New York, or in Towson, Maryland, just north of Baltimore. And I was like, well, I'll go to recording school and learn how to do, you know, record, do live sound and stuff like that. So while I was down there, I went to school at night. I worked all day, and then every night of the week I was going to school.
I love this, Joe.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll get into the studio. Maybe I'll be a studio guy. Maybe I'll be a sound engineer. Maybe I'll be that, you know. But during that time, my friend and James Breed was like, man, dude, you're such a good singer. Why aren't you singing with anybody? I'm like, well, I don't think. So some of the bands in Syracuse were like, well, why don't you come up and sing with us? And there was 3 bands. James Breed would have me come up and sing. Another band called Neural Groove, I would get up and sing a few songs with them. And there was this blues musician by the name of Miss E, with an E.
Okay.
And she's like, why don't you come up and sing? And this is the aha moment that I had. Singing with my other friends' bands were fun, they know that. But the aha moment happened at the Dinosaur Barbecue. And she told me, she's like, listen, I want you to learn 2 songs for this Saturday when you come down. I'm like, what's that? She goes, learn Before You Accuse Me, Eric Clapton song. I believe it's an older blues song, but Eric Clapton made it famous. And Come Together, but the Aerosmith, kind of the Aerosmith version, a little more funky, a little more bluesy, more rock. Learn those 2 songs, and I'm going to call you up to sing.
Pressure's on now.
So, and she kind of had no idea who I was, other than my girlfriend at the time was like, listen, he can sing. And so she's like, all right. So on a packed Saturday night at the Dinosaur Barbecue, I was bartending during the day at my buddy's bar, and then I left. I went down there, I sat there, drinking a beer, and she called me up, and she's like, all right, Before You Accuse Me, all right, 1, 2, 3, and start, dun, 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 Before You Accuse Me, and I was kind of singing it by, like...
Feel free to keep going, Joe.
Right, well, I will. But I started singing it kind of like Clapton did, and he's like, before you accuse me, take a look at yourself, and she looked at me, and she's like, come on. Like, she knew it. And then all of a sudden, I went, before you accuse me. And it came out. This voice came out of me that I'm like, and I went like that. And literally everybody in the place, I remember the bartender that I knew, everyone just went.
Yep.
And that was the moment I found my voice.
Yeah.
I had sang songs, but that was like the moment. I'm like, where did that come from? And I kept singing it. And I sang the whole song. And the place was like... you know, and then we did the next song, and it was the same way, and I got done, and my girlfriend at the time was like, what was that? You know, like, she goes, I've seen you sing.
I got goosebumps.
I've seen you sing for years. Like, what the fuck was that? I'm like, I don't know where it happened. That just all of a sudden came on me, and I found this. I'm like, I could do that.
Yes.
All the time. So then she started having me come up more and more. So then people started taking notice in Syracuse.
Yeah.
Then we decided to move to Baltimore. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped backwards. And
okay,
then we moved
man.
to Baltimore because I still just couldn't find a band. There was nobody that was, you know, kind of. But we moved to Baltimore not knowing if we were going to stay there forever. And we moved down there. I got done with recording school. and her and I were just both like kind of wanting to move back to Syracuse and be like, we want to be close to family again and get a house here. And right before I was getting ready to move back, I got a phone call one night at like 1 or 2 in the morning. It's my good friend Chucky Love. He's a well-known around Syracuse, and he was my best friend. And he's like, hey, I'm like, what? And he's like, God Below is looking for a singer. And God Below was the band that became Brand New Sin. Okay, so basically Brand New Sin was God Below, but with a different singer. So they had a different singer, but their sound was very, very, very hardcore, very metal. Like if you heard it, it's very heavy, and the singing was guttural.
I listened to Brand New Sin all afternoon today.
Right, but if you go back and listen to God Below, you'd be like, oh, okay, this is way different. And I told him, like, man, I'm like, Chucky, it's not my style of singing. I'm gonna blow my throat out. It's not what I do. That's intense heavy metal. Like that's not what I do. He's like, no, they're changing their style. They want to do something more hard rock.
Okay, hit more relaxed on your throat, probably.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a God Below, it's just.
Oh no, I don't like.
It's that type of singing, and I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
He's like, no. They've been trying out all these singers, and they can't find it. They're looking to do something like Leonard Skinner, but with Metallica, this southern rock type of thing. They want to change their direction, and at that time, God Below had already had label interest from a lot of labels, from major labels all the way down to all these big indie labels on the East Coast and West Coast. So I'm like, ooh, okay, well, I loved that band. I loved God Below. I loved the way they sounded. So I came home one weekend before I was getting ready to move home, and I went and met Slider, our one guitar player in Brand New Sin. He was working at a place called Daddy's Junkie Music up in Mattydale. And he's like, well, we're going to go to Stylene's tonight, and I'll bring you a demo tape. I'm like, all right. So he gave me the demo tape, and he's like, there's no singing on here. It's just songs that we're working on. He goes, there are some songs that have been written, but we want to hear what you can do with this.
Yeah.
So I just went back to Baltimore and packed up all of our stuff, and over the course of a couple of weeks just kept listening to these demos and like writing lyrics. And I remember writing lyrics to 2 songs. One became a song called The Oath. The other one was a song called Desperate Times, Desperate Means. But I was singing it over a song that would become Broken Soul. So it was like, so I come home, and my tryout for the band was supposed to be on September 11th, 2001.
Of course.
The tryout did not happen that
Obviously
day.
not.
It happened on the following Monday, on the 17th. And I went to a place up on the north side of Syracuse called the Love Shack. It was owned by Dave Love. It's just an old, like, big ass building, and there was like 10 or 15 band rooms in there, and there was all kinds of bands. Those places don't exist anymore. There used to be a couple places around Syracuse where all the bands rehearsed.
Yeah.
So I went in there, and it was the drummer Mike, the guitar player Chris, and Slider. The bass player and the other guitar player Kenny were at work.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, be here at 4 o'clock. I remember driving around the north side nervous as hell. Oh man, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if they're gonna dig what I'm doing, or I've never been in a band, Rick. If anyone has, if anyone hasn't caught that, like I was not in a band, and I was about to go try out.
See, what I love about you is I had this preconceived notion before I knew you that you only played to stadiums. No. And somebody told me he'll never do your show. Leave him alone.
No,
they told me that he will never do your show.
I'm just trying to always be. I'm just trying to, like, on my days off, I'm like, what am I gonna do? I got my daughter. Yeah, she's over here, but I'm like, I only have so many hours in a day. So
I love that you used to get nervous, man.
Oh,
it shows me you're a human.
I still do. I still do all the time.
Like you walk into Motif with a book bag, and you're backstage for like 2 seconds. You drop your book bag off, and then you're just going.
Yeah, well, that's just.
I was like, come
on.
on.
I mean, I get nervous, I kind of get that shake, but so I'm driving around the north side of Syracuse. I finally show up. I walk in. They're like, "Hey, man, you want a beer?" We're like, "Yeah." And Slider, I'd known. The drummer, Mike, I had known since he was a kid, knee-high to a grasshopper.
Yeah.
So him and I felt a little comfortable having a friend of mine there, Slider and I. But Chris was like long hair, but all of them had beards at the time because they said they weren't going to shave their beards until
Yeah.
they found a singer.
Yeah.
So everyone had these beards, and Chris just very quiet. Even to this day, Chris is very quiet and reserved, and I didn't know how to read him. I'm like, I don't know. And he had been in a band prior to that called Earth Crisis, and Earth Crisis is like one of the most legendary hardcore bands
Yeah.
to ever, period. Not just Syracuse, but that whole scene.
Yeah.
They're legends, and he was in that band for a number of years. So he had been around the world, and he had done it. So I'm like, who the fuck am I to be here? So I'm like, he's like, well, what did you do? And I'm like, I played in this one. They're like, oh, that's blah blah blah. Whatever names we had for them at the time, none of them had the names that became. And they did it, and I started singing, and Chris starts grooving, Slider's grooving. How you done? They're like, man, I really like what you're doing. Let's hear the other song that you got. So they do that one. They're like, I really like you're doing. They're like, all right, well, the first song, we have these other lyrics written for. So Slider, teach him this. So then that song became the opening song on the Brand New Sin record called Broken Soul.
Okay.
So I learned that, and like so I'm like, I'm feeling good, and so they're like, all right, we're gonna go make a phone call. No one had cell phones at the time, so we're gonna go back to Slider's house. Chris like, I'm gonna go home and eat something. Mike's like, I'm gonna go home and eat something. Be back here at 8. The whole band will be back here. So Slider and I went and grabbed a 12-pack of Milwaukee's Best and sat at his house, kind of shooting the shit, like about music and where our backgrounds were, what we wanted to do musically and all that stuff. We went back to the band room. Everybody showed up. We jammed. And it was just like, I don't even remember if they asked me officially, like, hey, you want to be in the band? I just kind of felt like, hey, let's jam tomorrow.
You were just automatically in.
So we spent the better part of the next 2 weeks there every day for 6 hours, just go. So then the one record label that was very interested in us, we had a manager at the time, and he's like, the record label wants to come up and hear what you guys are doing. We'll give you a little bit of money. Why don't you go into the studio? So we had 2 songs, basically. 2 songs. There was 2 songs in that demo. I have to send you that demo. I got it.
I would love it.
You'll hear the demo.
I want to be best friends with you is what I want.
Well, the demo was, about 3 or 4 weeks later, so this is early October, we went into a studio in Liverpool, New York, with a guy named Pete Walker, who was in a band called Maryland's Chambers way back in the day, in the late 80s and early 90s, that was real big around Syracuse.
Yeah.
And he had a studio called Village Recorders right in downtown Liverpool, New York. And we went up there, and we spent a day, like 2 days, just like cutting the demos. And on that second day, the 2 guys from our record label, Now or Never Records, showed up, and a little small independent label out of Jersey City. And they came in and they listened to the band, and I remember we're on the other side of the glass in the studio, and they're over there, and they're kind of like that, and then we get down and they're like, we're gonna be right back, and we're like, they're probably fucking leaving. They're probably just going back to Jersey City. Say, screw these guys. And then they came back with like, hey, here's a we're in talks for a contract. It wasn't like, here's your record contract. Like, no, let's sign this.
All right.
Saying you can't negotiate with anybody else until we decide whether we're going to sign a deal or not. And then you can be free agents with anybody else. And all of us were like, all right, our manager's like, this is a pretty decent option, so let's explore it. So eventually we went to New York City, we negotiated a deal, we got a lawyer, and Brand New Sin was born. And instead of starting to play shows, the record label was like, why don't you guys just finish the record? So then we moved into the studio. We basically moved in there, and we were there 7 days a week. As soon as everyone got out of work, because everyone had day jobs. I had a day job. I was working as a bank teller at the time, so that was like that was my last day job. That was my last day job before I did this. So we talk about eating, breathing, and sleeping, everything. So we would get done. We'd all go home, eat, and then be back at the studio at 6 o'clock, and we'd be there until 2 in the morning. Yeah. Every night, and we would be writing and finishing songs, and our producer would come in and, all right, well, that sounds good, let's go make the demo of that, and we'd go over into the other room and then record the demos, and eventually the label's like, we dig this. So and then we just started in November of that year, we started recording the record. So we spent November and December recording that first album.
Yeah.
And then January, the album was done. Our record label's like, you're going to be on the road starting in March. You should play some shows up in You probably should play some shows. You know,
Might be a good idea, Joe.
They had been well seasoned on stage or anything like that, but I hadn't played a show.
And you're still a nervous wreck?
Here I am.
Yeah, here I am.
Here I am, like never been in a band. Now I got a record deal. Never played a show. So in January, it was like January 15th or 16th, 17th, around there, 2002, we played a show, our first show at a place called the Stag Hotel in Syracuse, New York, which is now called the Halfpenny. It's in Armory Square.
Okay.
And we've just played in the back room with a couple other friends of ours, a band called Thunder Rosa, Sanford Wilkes, our buddy Sanford Wilkes, and another band that was debuting that night called Sin Pusher. So we just had a little 4-band bill with like 100 people crammed in something that was like literally about a third of this yard.
Yeah.
And we played our first show, and then we played another show at my buddy's bar that I used to work at. Then we played a birthday show for another buddy, and then we played a show down in Binghamton. That was it. Then we're off, and we hit the road.
Yeah.
We went on the road and played 6-7 dates. My 10th show was playing in Austin, Texas, in front of booking agents and other record labels and all these people. And our booking agent saw it that night, and he's like, I'm going to put you on the road with Motorhead.
Wow.
So my 10th show, like this all happened relatively quickly. And I'm like, I don't even know what am I doing? Like, fuck it, let's, whatever. Someone threw me in the deep end of the pool. I didn't know if I was going to be able to swim.
Tell me about it.
And then said, screw it, I'm just going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So from September and by middle of April, so you're talking October, November, December, January, February, March. 6 months later, we're opening for Motorhead.
Don't get any bigger than that, man.
And it was off to the races.
Were you friends with Lemmy? Did you hang out with him?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We became real good friends with Lemmy.
That's awesome.
We didn't know what to do. Like, the first show we had was in Denver, Colorado, and we just were kind of sitting in a corner waiting for them to say, Brand New Sin, bring your shit up on stage. And we just kind of sat in the corner, and all of a sudden Lemmy comes over, and he's about from where my daughter's sitting and where we're sitting. And he's over there, and you can hear him talking. And we're all like, dude, there's Lemmy. There's Lemmy. And he came over and introduced himself, and within a couple days he came up. He's like, I really like your band. We toured with them twice, in 2002 and again in 2005.
That's awesome.
And I do have an article. He was in Metal Edge magazine, and they asked him, like, one of the questions was, we know what you grew up listening to, what your influences. What are you listening to now? What are some of your favorite bands right now? Yeah. And Brand New Sin was one of his favorite bands. So it was like, we got, Lemmy likes us. Holy crap, he actually likes us.
Yeah.
And then it became like there was other people, like during that time in 2002, we ended up touring with Black Label Society. It was Zakk Wylde from Ozzy Osbourne, and he got into our band. So all these people that we looked up to, all of a sudden were fans of us.
Yeah. How cool is that, man?
So yeah, I mean, I guess we've covered where it started at the age of 5 all the way up to how I got into this business.
My hair is actually standing up.
Yeah.
I love my show, Joe.
It's been a crazy run, and there's times I don't know if it's me always trying to be a humble person, or me just like being so in the fast lane with this whole business that there's times I don't really think about it, but then when I start telling my story and telling to people like you or other, I'm just like, wow, I've done a lot of shit.
Yeah,
and that only takes us up to 2002, and there's another 20 years that's happened since then. Obviously we have very limited time. I'll have to come back for part 2 and part 3, but what else you want to know?
How did you already told me in person, but these guys don't know. How did you get Big Show's theme song?
The Big Show theme song. So that happened in 2005.
Yeah.
We were on tour, Motorhead.
Yep.
We were playing at a place called the Hampton Beach Casino, which is in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. And the casino, not meaning like what Turning Stone is. Yeah. It's not a casino. Casino means gathering place.
Yeah.
Gambling became a part of casinos, but the Hampton Beach Casino was a gathering place. And that place is legendary. If you look up the Hampton Beach Casino, it's been there since the 20s and 30s. Yeah. boxing matches, and it's right on the beach. It's got a downstairs with this huge ballroom upstairs.
Yeah.
The Stones have played there. Like, everybody's played this fucking place, right? So we had played there prior, but this is time we're playing there with them. And Motorhead had already done Triple H's theme song, so
Which
they
I
were
love, by the
right,
way.
and they were already into that. And the Lemmy and all the guys and Motorhead's crew are like, hey, you know, Stephanie McMahon and Triple H are going to be at the show tonight because they live very close to there.
Yeah.
So they're coming to the show. They're always coming to the show, and they're big fans of
Yes.
metal. So we're like, yeah, whatever. They'll probably come to see you guys and sneak in the back and you know, do their thing, and then, you know, Elvis out.
Yeah.
Well, that was not the case.
No,
so
that was not the case.
we were playing, we're opening, and it was like the second song. It's a big stage in a big room. It kind of wraps around. There's a balcony, and there's a space in between the stage and the barricade where usually photographers are, security is, like that, VIPs. So we're playing. All of a sudden, I see these two people come running down in between the two, and it's Stephanie and Triple H. And Triple H's hair is down to here, and Stephanie's got her hair down, and they're literally at my feet, and they're looking up, and they're like banging their heads, and like, they're
heart would
in,
go.
they're into it. Like the other guys in the band, me and Kenny, the one guitar player, know exactly who they are. The other guys in my band just aren't really into. They didn't know who the fuck these two are.
I'm still watching it.
Right, so am I. So I'm like, holy shit. I turn around like during a guitar solo or I'm not singing. I lean into Kenny. I'm like, dude, look at who's here. And he's like, I know. So we jammed out. We cranked. We had a great show. I come off stage. I go right into the back dressing room. The guys are breaking their other stuff down. Hear a knock at the door, and all of a sudden door opens up, and Stephanie McMahon and Triple H are like, holy crap, like, who are you guys? Brandon said, the guys from Motorhead said we had to get here to see you. We're so glad I'm like, dude, I can't believe that you guys even made it or you even did that. So we end up hanging out with them for all night, and having these really cool conversations. Stephanie and Triple H are the coolest, most down-to-earth people ever, and they treated us so well. And they're like, we're grabbing a bunch of CDs and some stuff. We gave them merch, and like, we're going to go back and tell the people at WWE we want to get, because you guys would be perfect. We don't know for what, but we're going to get you involved. Yeah. And it's one thing, like, no offense to some of the other wrestlers, but they can say that, but it's the boss's daughter, and now the guy who basically runs the company. It's the biggest superstar at the time.
I was just going to say, look,
they're married. I mean, like, they're connected. So, like, all right, let's see what happens, and at that time, we had already well enough knew that, like, we had been given promises by a lot of people. Oh, we're going to do this, and you're going to get this, and it never came to fruition.
I got you.
So we're like, all right, we'll wait and see. So a couple weeks later, our manager called us, and like, WWE does want to do something with you. They don't know what yet, but they'll contact us when they got an idea. But hold. So like, all right. Yeah. So we held. So then fast forward, that was in May. Fast forward to October of that fall, and we were on tour with Black Label Society, and I remember this vividly. We're standing at Motel 6, because that's all we could ever really afford, in Charleston, South Carolina. We were playing a show that night, and our manager, we had one cell phone in the band. He's like, give us a call, put everybody on speaker. We get on speaker, and he's like, WWE's got news for us. They want you to do the Big Show's theme song. I'm like, hell yeah. We're like, do we got to write it? What do we got to do? And he's like, they want you to take the existing song, because there was a song that he had before. It was really blues laden. It was sang by Michael Hayes.
Oh, okay. Yep. The Freebirds.
From the Freebirds, and wrestling legend with himself. But they're like, they're revamping his character. They're going to do all this different stuff with his character. So we're like, what do we do? They're like, sludge it up. Do something, to what you're going to do. And then when you guys are up in the Northeast, you have 2 days off in between Springfield, Massachusetts, and Toledo, Ohio on tour. So the day after Springfield, you're going to go to Stamford, Connecticut.
I was going to say Stamford, Connecticut.
And record the song.
Yep.
We're going to spend the day in the studio, and then you guys will still have a full day to drive to Toledo to finish, to pick up the tour again. So we kind of toyed with it. We got in the studio that morning with with Jim Johnstone, who, I mean, up until a few years ago was the guy that did every theme song, every bit of music that from the early, you know, wrestling, rock and wrestling connection that they had. You know, remember that record they did back in the day?
I do. Pile Driver.
Yeah, they had all that. They had they did Land of a Thousand Dances.
Yep.
Nikolai Koloff sang a song in there.
Yes.
Hulk Hogan had his song.
Real American.
What it wasn't Hulk Hogan's song at the time. At the time, it was still Marty Jannetty, and it was still oh God, who is the? No, it's Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham's theme song originally.
Oh, I
Real
didn't know
American was original. If go back and listen to that record, that was originally Mike Rotundo, who was a graduate of Syracuse University.
Yes.
And Barry Windham.
His son is Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they.
This is a whole nother episode.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode too, right?
I'll talk wrestling with you all day, Joe.
But he had been involved, so we got in the studio with him. He's like, "Listen, it's gonna be a very busy day. It's Monday."
Yeah.
He goes, "We're working on WWE Raw. We're working on the Raw episode tonight, getting all the vignettes and the music ready for that." So he goes, "We're gonna be kind of weaving in and out of your session and all that stuff. So go in and start jamming." And he was like, he made us very efficient. At that time, we had been pretty seasoned.
Yeah.
You know, we had 4 or 5 years under our belt, a couple records under our belt, tons of studio time. So this guy whipped us into shape. He was a producer.
Yeah.
So he's like, boom, 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 boom. And I just remember getting the music done. He's like, "All right, all of you out of here. Joe stays, and then let's get the vocals."
Yeah.
Now, mind you, like the night before I didn't sleep maybe 2 hours drinking for, you know, until 5 in the morning. And here I am in the studio trying to sing what would become one of the most iconic theme songs in WWE
Don't be afraid
history.
to do it.
So I'm like, oh God, I'm like, what was I thinking last night? You know, my voice is like, when you're on the road, you know, your voice isn't always at 100%. So I sang it. We wrote some, you know, he had to write a second verse for it. We did all this stuff, and I when you work with a producer like that, sometimes you're not just singing stuff through. He's like, "All right, sing that line. All right, let's do this line. Do that line again." And you don't realize that they're kind of just piecing everything together.
Yeah.
And the very last thing that we had to do was that intro. So he's like, "All right."
I'll sing it.
He goes, right. He goes, "Wait until we let's get everything else, and then we'll go back to this, because this is the money shot."
Okay.
Anybody that knows wrestling knows that you're gonna, like, when you hear the glass break, Stone Cold.
If you smell
Exactly where I was gonna go. You hear that, you know The Rock is coming.
Yeah.
You hear the funeral bell. You know the Undertaker's coming out. You know, all these wrestlers' theme songs. Like within like a second, you know who the fuck is about to come out before they even show their face. So he's like, we have to do that. Like, so he's like, think this guy's going to be coming into WrestleMania and all these things, and like, we need to have that. So no pressure. And I was kind of trying to do it like Michael Hayes, so it was like, well, you know, which is more of a bluesy thing.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to do that, and he's like, no. New attitude, all this stuff. He's just like, he goes, listen to this part of the song that you did. And he goes, give me that.
Dig.
And I went, well, you know, just like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to scare all your neighbors, but.
No, you're not. Go ahead.
Well, you know, I did that, and it was like, and he's like, all right, do it again. And then we did it like 4 or 5 times. And he's like, I think I got it. And he's like, all right, no offense, but I got to get Raw ready.
Yeah.
All right, we're out. Jumped in the van, drove to Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember we came back from that tour, and I got an MP3. Even then, it was file sharing was very hard to do. I got an MP3. I was living at my parents' house at the time. And I remember listening to it. And we didn't hear the finished product that day. We only heard bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And I heard it. I'm like, oh, my God, this is awesome.
Yes,
you know,
it
this is so cool. And then the whole wrestling thing became something pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and then eventually I'm seeing. I mean, he isn't wrestling right now, but I did do his new theme song in the AEW.
How did that come about?
Well, you know, AEW's not even close. You know, they're a competitor to WWE. So we had gotten to. This was August of 2021. Yeah,
Relatively new.
I don't know, man. The pandemic really warped time and space, didn't it? It wasn't 2020. It was definitely 2021. I remember, like, saying that, like, Big Show, now Paul White, because
Yep.
Big Show is owned by
Yes.
WWE,
Yep.
is now signed to AEW. They were signing all these people. And I remember putting up a tweet. I don't never tweet. And I remember putting up, hey, if you need a theme song, I'm still here.
I'm still here.
So one day I got done with an afternoon stream on Twitch, and somebody's like, hey man, someone's trying to track you down on Twitter. Have you been on it? I'm like, I don't go on Twitter. And all of a sudden I open Twitter and Instagram and all this stuff, and I'm getting messages from this guy named Mickey Ruckus.
Okay.
Mickey Ruckus is the musical director for everything in the AEW. He's like, hey man, message me. I message him. He's like, hey man, what's your phone number? I really need to talk to you now. I'm like, all right. So calls me. He's like, hey, we had a meeting with Paul. And you know, we got a new theme song because he might start wrestling soon, but he's going to be wrestling soon. We need to have a theme song for him. I'm like, all right, am I writing? He's like, no, I've already written it. I've already got the lyrics written and everything else, because just need your voice. Because we thought about it, and he went down some other options of having this guy do it or that guy do it, and nothing was making sense. And Paul's just like, well, just go get Joe. Go get the same guy, you know? So he's like, can you do it? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, when do you need it done by? He's like, today.
Oh.
This is like on Monday.
Oh.
I'm like, wow. I'm like, all right. He goes, you have ability to record? I'm like, yeah, I got a studio here in my house. It's like, all right, I'm going to send you the files, learn the song, cut like 3-4 different vocals to it, and then send it back to me. I'm like, all right. He sends it to me. We can negotiate a deal. He's like, we don't have a lot of money, but, you know, we'll pay you. I'm like, whatever. Whatever. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We'll worry about that later. So he sends it to me. I listen to it, and I'm like, okay, here we go again, you know. But now it's all on me. I don't have anybody in the studio with me. It's just me in my house. So I'm like, all right. I'm nervous. I try to do a couple takes of vocal, and I'm just like, I'm too nervous. So turn around to my bar, I pour a huge glass of whiskey, and I just...
Is that what you always do, Joe?
Well, not always, but in that, I mean, that's not always what I do, but in that situation I did. Most of the time when I'm recorded records, I don't drink at all. It's like, it's very focused. But that day I'm like, no, I'm drinking. So I drank that big shot, and then I was like, I sat down, and this is all happening within like 10 minutes. And then I recorded 3 vocals and sent it back to him. And I call him, I'm like, hey, I just zipped them back over. He's like, bro, that was like 45 minutes since I sent it to you. I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, well, maybe it's not good enough. So he's like, all right, let me listen to it. I'll call you back. Calls him back. He's like, I've never worked with anybody. It's worked that fast and like professionally. I'm like, I don't fuck around. He's like, it's perfect. He goes, and then the next day that night he sends me a rough idea, because I had to work that. He's like, can you work that well into there? Because that will let everybody know, and it'll be a nod to the past, but it's still this. It's your voice. It's Paul. It's got all this, you know, wrestling fans love this like intertwinement and everything else. So I did it, and then he sent me a demo. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then he's like, I'm gonna screw with it. And then that Thursday night, they debuted it, and I couldn't tell anybody.
So within 72 hours.
72 hours, they had the thing. And then that night, I was streaming on Twitch, and all of a sudden my phone's blowing up from all my wrestling friends. They're like, dude, you did the new theme song. He just came out on AEW. And then it went, and I think that's gotten over 1 million views on like on YouTube.
Imagine that.
So, you know, and the cool thing was, it's like this time they said, you know, Paul White, AEW, New Room, New View, featuring Joe Altier. So that really like drove a bunch of traffic towards all my stuff, and for the most part, everyone really dug it. He hasn't wrestled yet. There was a whole storyline because there was gonna be more music that was gonna be doing it, but I don't know where what's going on with him.
Okay.
But it's there.
I think he's just home being rich.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm almost 50. He's got to be in his. He's about the same age as me. So I remember hanging out with him a few times. And
We're
I think
not that far apart. I'm going to be 47 this year.
Yeah. So he's probably 50 or 51. So I mean, you know, old ass wrestler and not a big dude. So, but yeah, that's how I did the other one. Yeah. So
The Rock made fun of that song one time in the ring.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's the big slow.
Right. Yeah. It's always been that. And then it's so funny because there's so many people, like when I talk about it or I've posted about it on TikTok or everyone, they're like, you're not him. Big Show sings his own theme song. He even
No, he
said something
doesn't.
like, I'm like, people, look it up on, I'm like, you can just Google it. You'll quickly realize that I'm not lying.
I didn't fan all over you like I wanted to because I got a lot of musicians coming on.
Right.
But I'm fanning all over you. I did say it's a big chilling day. It's a big chill because this is my biggest interview. You are my biggest interview.
Stop. But yeah, it's pretty surreal because there's times I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, I don't think about that.
Yeah.
I don't think about.
You need
I mean,
to-
we've done a lot of cool stuff. I've done, my band and I have done a lot of cool stuff. I've done a lot of cool stuff, but I don't think there's anything cooler than singing one of the most iconic theme songs to one of the most legendary wrestlers of all time.
Yes.
But I don't think about it, and then
Yeah.
every once in a while I think about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, go back and tell 12-year-old Joe was watching WrestleMania in 1985.
Yeah.
That I would be involved
Yes.
and would know these wrestlers, and these wrestlers would know who I am, or you can go anywhere in the world with a wrestling fan and I could do that and they'd be like, you're that guy, because no one knows the face, but I mean, I think about literally the millions upon millions upon millions of people that heard that on a weekly basis and then compound that over the course of like 15 or 16 years. Hundreds of millions of people know that song.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a part of wrestling history.
When I watched you do it on TikTok,
Yeah.
I was like, son of a bitch. And I already knew it was you,
Right.
but I was like, that's the magic voice.
that was the thing that kind of broke open TikTok for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really know what to do on TikTok. I'm like, man, I'm talented, but there's literally tens of thousands of me on the platform. How do you cut through?
Yeah.
And my good friend Josh from K-Rock, I think it was him and I, he's like, dude, you're the voice of you're the voice of Big Show. Why don't you just do like, hey,
Yeah.
you ever wonder what the voice of these wrestling things? Well, I'm the guy.
Yeah.
And that was the first TikTok video to like take off, and it went over, I think it's at like 600,000 views. But that's what broke open the thing, and for the most part, it was like the comment. You go look at the comments sometime. It's hilarious.
That's where I get you to respond to me. So I'm like,
But dude, it's just times like I even tell people. I remember yesterday, like they put me in a group text for this thing. I got a gig I'm playing in Louisiana next March for a friend of mine's wedding.
Nice.
That I met through the music channels and all
Yeah.
that stuff, and he's a fan. And I told the guys, I'm like, listen, man, I might take a week to get back to you sometimes. I get completely open. I don't have a social media manager or a manager doing anything else. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to juggle every part of my business.
Yeah.
And there's days I'm like, all right, now I'm going to sit down and do the comments to this, or I'm going to get back to these people and all that stuff. So it just gets crazy. But yeah, that was really what broke open TikTok, and then it just kind of, the floodgate happened from
178,000 last I checked.
there. 218.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
But it slowed down. The last one that I had went big was a couple months ago. I did a version of AC/DC's "You Shook Me All Night Long" as a ballad in a minor key, and that went viral again. So, but I haven't had a viral video since. So, but
You make sure you're wearing my chillin' shirt when you do it.
yeah, well, that's the thing. I actually just launched a thing today where I got people like, hey, advertised with me on my videos, because before I used to do these videos and I would do like, hey, tonight's video is brought to you by Advantage Hardwood Floors, blah, blah, blah. I would do this advertisement, which is great, but like when you look at the retention of like where the video views are going, people don't want to hear that advertisement. But the one thing that I noticed on a lot of my videos is I'm doing my video and someone's like, I'm wearing like an obituary t-shirt or like some band t-shirt or some other t-shirt,
Yeah.
Buc-ee's.
Yes,
Like I wear these videos.
Big in Florida.
And people are like, hey man, your t-shirt.
I'm waiting.
Like, oh, I do, I got it. But,
I'm waiting, Joe.
so they're like, like the t-shirts are talk. I'm like, man, that could be a passive way. So then I just wear it. And then, I share, my TikTok video goes to TikTok, and then I share it on Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, and now YouTube Shorts.
Yep.
So I literally trickle it over the course of a day, so that video goes everywhere, which reaches, my followers on all of that is over 300,000 people.
Yeah.
So the potential of all that stuff, plus it lives forever and all that stuff. So I kind of just launched that today, and I go, I'll just tag you in the places that you're tagged.
Yeah.
And people will see that, and if people are smart enough, they'll just, hey, chilling with Rick.
God,
or
I can't wait.
Bucky's, or whatever, everything, something like that. So, kind of doing that. So, anything else? I mean, dude, we're gonna have to do this again.
We're gonna.
We're gonna have to do this
Can
again.
I get you later on this year?
Yeah, let's do that, because there's. I mean,
I gotta
I
get
know
your
there's
number.
a lot more. But you got one? Do you have another question you definitely want to ask me before we wrap up?
What's it like to notice the bands liking your videos? What's that like to you? What's that mean to you?
I mean,
And we'll wrap it.
going back, having Lemmy, and I mean, it goes back to when like Lemmy and Zach Wilde and guys like that I worshipped and had literally posters on my wall. Like the movie from Rockstar. I grew up with the posters of these guys on my wall. Now I'm one of them. So like that was cool, but that was like before social media. Now to get those accolades and have it happen like on a weekly basis, and some of them being very big, and some of them being like Faster Pussycat or Corey Glover from Living Color or Stephen Piercy from Rat, like all those people just taking notice and just like giving a like or giving a comment or a quick share and stuff like that. So like it's pretty cool. It's one thing to get like one, but like when you're starting to do that and you're getting it more and more, I'll be honest, sometimes I'm purposely trying to get them to notice me, and I'm doing that because you can do that on the internet now. Like you couldn't do that in 1987. How the hell do you get Stephen Piercy from Rat to like, hey, I covered your song in this bar? Like, well, how did you do? You don't. But like now everyone's on there. But
Round and Round is my favorite Rat song.
Yeah, did you hear the version I did?
I didn't.
Oh, I don't know how. Send you.
We're gonna be best friends, John.
So, but I did Round and Round as a ballad, and that was how Stephen Piercy found it.
One more question. I understand you put out content. Is that something you thought of? How can I do this? We'll just change it to a minor. Is that something that you did?
Well, it's not
it's so hard for
wrestling. That's awesome.
You mentioned WWE. It's hard for me to wrap this.
Well,
man.
it's how that's something I started doing years ago.
Yeah.
Like what I'm doing with these songs is no different than what I was doing like 20 years ago. Like to back up a little bit, like when I would come home from Brand New Sin tours, I would do what was called Brand New Joe at the time. It was early Just Joe shows, and that was how I made money before I went back out on the road. So I was doing that, and every once in a while they'd just play a song a little bit differently. It was a slow night. I'm like, oh, what about if I did this differently? But I think what really opened that floodgate for me to like reimagine songs is one time I used to have a residency every Tuesday night at a place called Station 58 in North Syracuse.
Okay.
And I played there every Tuesday night, and some Tuesdays weren't all that busy.
Yeah.
And I'd just be sitting up there having a couple beers, hanging out with like maybe one or two people that were there, and I would just try to do that. And someone's like, everyone always like, oh, do this song. And I'm like, dude, it's heavy metal. How do I do this? And one night I took Blackened by Metallica.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'm going to completely deconstruct this. Make it a different song, but still keep the essence of the darkness and the lyrics and everything else. So that happened in like in 2004, 2003. So I would do that, and I would be like, oh my God, do that. So I would start doing that to different songs.
Yeah.
And I had that in my repertoire for a number of years. So when it came to start doing these reimagined songs, it was very simple for me to be able to do that. My brain can do that.
Yeah.
This goes back to reading music and having music theory. I played in concert band all those years in high school and stuff like that. So it was basically taking that and like, what can I do with this? Yeah. But what really broke open that floodgate online is one night I was on Twitch and I decided, Avery, look at these two up there.
I love my show out here.
Oh, yeah, I love it. That's awesome. No one can see that, but there's two squirrels just up there just eating away, chilling out. So one night I was starting to do Brown Eyed Girl, but like slow it down. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, what if I put it in a minor key? Like, take it from a G to a G minor.
Yeah.
And I started just playing it. And I'm like, man, it changed the whole demeanor and everything in the song, sort of like I was doing to these metal songs. So I'm like, all right. So then I recorded that one, and that was the one that like was my first one that went over 1 million on TikTok. Yeah. So then that opened up the lane. So then I was like, all right, now what songs can I do now? Yeah. And it really like challenged me. That was the one thing that the pandemic helped me do, is like I had a lot more time at home, one thing that Twitch allowed me to do is like kind of experiment. Even when I wasn't on Twitch, we weren't going anywhere. There was nothing to do. So I honed a whole other skill. You know, I'm like, well, screw it. Let's take these things that I used to do, these metal songs, let's do this. But then I started doing to metal songs, and now people are like, what if you did this? What if you did that?
Yeah.
And some of them are harder than others, because some of them, like, the chord progressions, like, I can't wrap my brain on, like, how am I going to, I got to completely deconstruct these songs. So that became a thing, and now it's like even the other day, I was at a gig, and it was kind of quiet last week, and I did My Prerogative by Bobby Brown.
Yep.
But I kind of slowed it down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this takes on a different meaning.
Yeah.
And other people are doing that on TikTok, so now it's kind of my thing. Yeah. So I don't know how to explain it, but it was something that I planted the seeds with almost 20 years ago.
Something so simple, just tune it to a minor key.
Yeah.
And you make it sound phenomenal.
Yeah, and sometimes
like it could be another hit.
Sometimes it comes to me really quick.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't come to me quick, I either shelf it or be like, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But I don't even know. Someone's like, why don't you put out an album with just all the minor key ones, which I've done. I've released Brown Eyed Girl and then Stand By Me, which have both done very well.
Yep.
I don't know if I've done another, but I have to go back and look at my TikToks. I've done probably 15 or 20 in the minor key. And someone's like, well, why don't you just put them all together and put them out as a record of all the minor key stuff. Jeez. I mean, it's great, but then there's like, all right, where's the time? I got to record this and make it sound good and send it to this guy, and it's money.
I got
to
chill
be
with
spent,
Rick first,
and then I got chill with Rick, and I got 7 gigs today and 5 gigs tomorrow. So there's a lot going on with that. So, but it's fun. It keeps me on my toes. I'm hoping at some point something breaks so I don't have to gig as much and I can spend more time in the studio creating.
You got to be loaded, Joe. Come on.
Oh, God, I wish. God, I wish.
The last time I saw you at Turning Stone, thank you for being so nice to me.
Always, man.
I mean, I respect the shit out of you. I love what you do.
If it isn't for people like you or the people that are like that, I'm nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you were already late going to the piano, but you came up and took a picture with me, shook my hand, thanked me, and then you stopped when I was leaving. It's like you shook my hand. It's like I don't want nothing.
I do that to anybody who's like, especially people that I see around or people that I know that really. I take the time out because
I'm a fan, man.
I'm a fan too, you know, of other people. So when people do that to me, it means a lot to me. So.
Have you watched my show?
Yes.
Okay. That makes me feel awesome.
Who was the one you had on a couple weeks ago? It's like maybe your first episode of this year.
Lynn White.
Yes.
1 hour and 47 minutes. I hope we beat that.
Yeah, we will.
I want to get your number because it's really hard to get a hold of you. I know you don't check your shit too often. You're busy. And
my number is actually the quickest way to get a hold of me.
So I want to book you for later this year. I don't want to wait a fucking year, man.
No, you won't. We'll do because we got a lot more to talk about.
And I'll respect your number. I'm not going to blow you up.
Absolutely. But I also know that the people that are watching that may not know much about me want to know a little bit more. But but it's always hard for me to talk about myself sometimes. Dude, I
love it though, man.
I know, but it's like I feel like I'm like, oh, I did this and I did this.
But people out there think you're superhuman.
I wish, man.
And that guy gets 10,000 likes. No matter, he can post it. I just farted and you get 10,000 likes.
It's a science, man. It's all about advertising.
Teach me how to
merchandising. Just like
I fell for it.
Remember yogurt from
yes.
Yogurt. It's all about the merchandising. Spaceballs, the lunchbox. Spaceballs, the sports drink. Spaceballs, the flamethrower. Yeah, that's what it's all about, man.
Well,
Rick,
I'm trying to trick
having me, man.
No problem,
I get to take this home.
Yes, that's yours, man.
I got a koozie. I'm happy.
I'll get her one too. What's her favorite color?
What color? What's your favorite color?
You like pink?
Purple. You got a purple one?
I got it.
Got a purple one. I'm gonna take a purple koozie.
Yes.
So, all right, man.
Joe,
see you, everybody. We'll be back.
Brother. Stand your ass up.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Love you, brother.
Thank you. The cops are over here listening to us.
Yeah.
Did you name the two?